Hello, welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin the Guy. So we're going to do a live stream today, and sorry about the camera quality. This is off my old laptop. I'd usually use my phone, which has 4K, but I figured with live, this would be a kind of nice little introduction into one of the series I wanted to bring out, which is this old bike. If any of the old timers out there are been around. And you remember the old PBS days where they had Bob Ross and, happy painting and the happy clouds and that kind of thing. And also you have this old house, which was fixing up this whole thing before HGTV took that whole thing to a whole new level. And I figured a lot of my videos are kind of like that kind of relaxing monotone hanging out with the guys series, which was my initial thought. So I figured I'd just do a live thing. I'm just doing working on this specialized Roubaix Elite, and I did a whole frame detailing on it. I should have a video up on that if you want to look into this. But right now what I'm going to be doing is assembling the parts onto this. So I clean them in a Sonic cleaner, and I'm just going to lube up a few of them and the pivot points and so forth with a light lube, and then install them and just kind of jibber jabber my way on doing this. So here without further ado, this old bike. Let's check it into it. So what I use is Triflow's Superior Lube. You can tell by the worn out bottle I use it quite often. This particular bike, we had some older brake calipers, which I'm going to replace with some rival calipers. A little bit nicer, better braking power, that kind of thing. Onto that. And what I'm lubing is the pivot points and also the bolt point on this, where it's going to be a little bit smoother contact there. Since I did a Sonic cleaning on this, it actually stripped it with any kind of lube. So, and hanging out here, we're gonna scuff up the glaze off of the brake pads on these guys as I prep these to be installed. So yeah, working on bikes all these years, I mean, you learn these little tricks of prepping and so forth, of being in service departments, and my parents and I having our own shop back in the 90s, Parker Bikes, you see an old banner behind me. So yeah, you learn from other mechanics, which is a really awesome kind of deal. So here we are, putting these guys up onto the rear derailleur. The rear derailleur has 8 pivots, 2 lower and 2 on the top. And again, since I stripped all the lube off of these by using the Sonic cleaner, you want to refresh it with something nicer. And it's ready to go, like so. I do have several videos of with bikes I have refurbished, lubing the pivot points and so forth onto the front derailleur. Same kind of concept. But I figured I'd do a little hangout session as an experiment, and obviously get more content out there. And if you see this video recorded at a later time, feel free to throw in a comment or two. Talk about things that maybe you refurbished or worked on or have done on your bikes and so forth. Now the shifters, I relubed these already, but since I did a Sonic cleaner on these and got all the gunk out of the actual shifter itself, I like to use the aerosol version of Triflow because it really kind of bubbles up and gets into those little parts and moving pieces. It's like a little watch inside there. So you want to get that all done. And with the Sonic cleaner, with the heat element, it takes all that old grease and sheds it, makes it go away, which is very nice because it gumps up over time. And in that case, it makes like this shifter act like it's no longer working, like it's done. So I've been able to revive a lot of these back to life, that kind of thing. And also, I've been having a buddy of mine manufacture these covers to cover top of these for me. Since a lot of these just break off and they don't have OEM ones anymore available, and the ones you do see like on eBay, they're still in a little package. They're still like $80 for one. You're like, that's ridiculous. So I got these made, and I paint them from basically a printer, 3D printer, and then I'm going to replace that after I have them installed. So I got the brakes, the trailers, front and rear, got the crankset ready to go. What else do I need? I cleaned the frames, all polished. The bearings on these are still in really good shape, which is a good little savior there. Sometimes you have to replace those, and the headset is still really smooth. So that aspects are all still really good. So now on to installing. I did already true the wheels and cleaned them, and they're holding air pressure. So when I start, actually, what I like to do first is get the brakes on. And front and rear, when you take these off, you may forget which one's front and rear. There's a little adjuster or replacement bolt here that you pull out to slide the cartridge out. Those are going to be on the back side of the bike. So if the wheel's going forward, it's going to be pushing this brake pad into this front portion. So this one, also another dead giveaways, the shorter ones on the back here, threads, are usually for the rear. So I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on those, which I like. Spread it on there. I don't do it too tight, just enough that holds its position. So when I do adjustments and string up the cables, they'll be good to go. So on this side. Have that installed. Now I'm onto the rear wheel. Flush on both dropouts. Tighten up the skewers so when I tighten it, it's flush. And on this particular one, I replaced the wheels because the original wheels were toast. So I got a wheel set here off of another bike that I refurbished and was damaged frame. So now I'm replacing this guy with new wheels, or new to it wheels. And irony is these are Specialized hub wheels with Mavic rims. So hey, matchy with Specialized. It worked out just fine. Also want to get the spawner bracket on there. Move this portion as well. And this is the adjuster nut and bolt. And what this adjuster does is compresses the bearings together. So that's a pretty important piece. This one uses an Allen. Sometimes they use a special key. FSA uses Allen. Shimano uses a special key. You want it to be smooth, not tight, no wobbles. I think it's actually this size, which is your 5mm. There's two bolts, the pinch bolts on both sides, and they would need to be equally pressured. So I snug them up with this, and I use a small torque here to get it to the 15 millibars. Go back and forth until they're even. You want to do the same thing with the bolts up front on the stem as well, because you got two pressure points, and this one has two up front, but sometimes you'll have a stem that has 4, so you want to alternate those until they have equal pressure in all of them, so you don't have one loose guy on there. So we got the crankset on there, onto, got the bolt, front derailleur, front derailleur, like so. Sometimes you'll have scarring from your derailleur, so you know where to put it back. If you're putting on a brand new derailleur, you want it to be a couple millimeters over the big chainring teeth when it shifts over, and parallel with the chainrings is the good starting point. Then you do your micro adjustments from there, depending how used the derailleur is or what have you, the function to hit those gears smoothly. So sometimes you have to adjust it back and forth, usually a little bit of height. Obviously there's a lot of cable tension you got to adjust on those two. So got that part down. I'll have to put on this for the cables. Shifters in a moment. So gonna do the derailleur. Before that, I like to throw on this DAG derailleur alignment tool gauge. Make sure this derailleur hanger is straight as it could be. And they use, this is a replaceable one, so they use a softer aluminum so it's more malleable. And you want it to be even. Both sides. And you light the light on this. So I don't want to torque it too much or you end up snapping that derailleur hanger and you have to get a new one. Derailleur hangers you can get from Wheels Manufacturing or Wheels or something like that. They do a whole plethora of different sizes for different frames and so forth, so you can match that up. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in rear derailleur. So my little trick is I like to get my thumb in there to engage this derailleur out a little bit because this is going to fight up against the frame when I put it on. So if I push it with my thumb in, and that way it makes it a little bit easier to put it on there. A little trick there to install onto the rear derailleur hanger, like so. There's that guy there. Then onto the shifters themselves. This one's the right hand one. So the bolt's still inside there, so I need to catch it on here. So this bar is kind of nice. It has little gauge lines, so you can kind of identify where you need to put your shifter. But if you don't have those, the old school trick is taking a straight edge with a ruler and kind of measuring from the flat part on each shifter on both sides. And that way you can kind of determine they're even on that case. This one seems. And bars have all sorts of different angles and so forth, different brands that do that. So they're kind of cool in that aspect. I like to put these up a little bit higher so it's more a little flush here on your hands. But it is a personal preference, also a fit scenario on that, on adjustments. But if anything, when you're installing them, you want them to be even. And if you want to fit them, and once you get everything stringed up, before you wrap your bars, you want to kind of get those measurements and those feeling the set in your more comfortable position before you wrap those bars. Because once you wrap those bars with bar tape and you need to move this up and down, it's not going to be great because it's going to pull on the bar tape and get all muddled, or you're going to have to pull it back and rewrap it. And if you rewrap bars before, depending on the tape you have, it has a sticky tape back to it. Sometimes they don't like to be rewrapped. So it's one of those things that you want to definitely wrap it when you're done with the fitting kind of position on that. So when you look at high-end fittings where somebody's getting a custom bike built or whatever, they won't wrap the bars until actually done the fitting is over. Get that on there, lined up. So shifter's in the right place there, ready to go. Got your crank set, your front rear derailleur. Also need a solid chain, which I ordered one for this guy. Chains are specific to speed, so keep that in mind. So if you have a 9-speed drivetrain, which means 9 speeds is the 9 gears that you have back here. If you have 10, count your gears back here, you have 10, that's 10 speed. If you have 11, that's 11 speed. You can't interchange those unless go back in time or into lower end componentry. A chain that's a 7, 8, 9 speed will work on all three of those. Because what they did is kept the chain the same width, but they just expanded out the cassette itself. But when you get into the 10, 11, 12, they actually changed the thickness of the cassette, which is this part here, and then you have to have a narrow chain. They're not going to work well with each other. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to go grab myself a chain. So I got myself a PC 951 from SRAM. SRAM chains are actually pretty cool. They have I think they call it the Power Link. They call it the Power Link. Shimano calls theirs the Quick Link, and there's a couple other chains out there, Quick Connect, for some of those others. So since I did not keep the original chain, I'm going to measure this out on the bike. And the reason why I didn't keep it, because this bike had a lot of mismatched parts. So with a bike with mismatched parts, you just can't assume that they put on the chain correctly. So if it's your own personal bike and you bought a bike new, or it was professionally installed yourself prior, you can just take the chain and line it up the length, and just cut it with a chain tool to the proper length. In this scenario, or if you do any part swapping, that's another one too. If you take a different derailleur, different cassette sizing, or different chainring sizing, you may need to readjust your chain length. So if you're going to do all that, like I'm one of larger range gears in the back, I'm changing my derailleur, what have you, go ahead and buy a new chain. It's a less expensive part of the rest of the drivetrain. Sometimes it could be 20 to 50 bucks, but you might as well start off with a whole new chain so it's measured out correctly to the new cassette that you may put on there. So you got a couple ways of doing this. The one I'm going to show today is going over big and big, excluding the derailleurs. And the reason being is, if you're excluded the derailleurs, and if it was going through the derailleurs, you want to have enough chain so it doesn't rip that rear derailleur right off. So you take this and you overlap it 2 links, which 2 links will give that derailleur, when it's on big and big, enough gap, or enough spacing, or enough length to keep it from ripping off, that kind of thing. So double check that. Back to big and big. And, in this scenario, you can go ahead and trim off a little, and you find if you need to shorten it up, and I'll show you that in here, you can shorten it up and take out another link. Putting another link in is a real bugger. It can be done, but that's where it gets to, you need to have scale. It's one of those situations, you've had it done it several times. In this case, I don't drive the pin out all the way, just enough that I can break it free. And with extra scraps, throw in your pack in your bike. So if you ever get on the trail and you break a chain or whatever, you have a little piece that you can splice back in there, maybe. This particular chain is not directional. Some of the upper end chains are directional, so you have to keep note on that. For this one, I can just thread through. So I'm threading it through the rear derailleur, through the jockey pulleys. A couple different ways you can do it. This is the way I've done it over the years, so it's just kind of like my go-to natural. Then the front derailleur. And what you're seeing here is when you put that chain pin in, the derailleur itself is pushed down. It's not rubbing up against the upper jockey pulley on the chain. And these particular, it's a quick link, so it's 2 pieces, kind of like your old school master link, right? Which uses this pair of pliers. These are not too expensive. It's this one's a Park tool one. You can get a knockoff one. It doesn't matter, but you definitely get one. And this is the MLP dash 1.2. 1.1 didn't make the cut, but 1.2. This is designed. It has like, you could designed to take it off, also to put it on. Sometimes you need a little bit of torque on there to get them to snap. 9 speeds are usually not too tight, so you can actually just put it in here. My goodness, I got some of my hair in this already. Oh, goodness. One on each side. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Jibber jabber. And slide it in. And if it doesn't pull tight, but they're engaged, then that's when you use the tool going on the outside of the power link on both sides and get it to snap. So right here, I know it's going to be okay big and big, but the rear derailleur, here's the other one, small and small. You want to have the derailleur to have enough tug to hold it so it's not providing too much chain slack. But if I push this up to my big ring, and I'll roll this onto my big ring here, or big cog in the back and big basically. It's kind of hard to do without all the derailleurs strung out, but I'm going to try to do this. It's demonstration. So when I get on big, it has enough tension here. So it doesn't rip it up all the way. If your chain is too small, you go in that big and you're not thinking of it, you can rip that rear derailleur right off. And before you know it, it's a hot mess inside of the road and you're just crying because you just destroyed a whole bunch of bits. But in the relaxed position of both derailleurs on this particular one, it is small on that. So that's how you kind of do it. If you found this, and if it was needed to be tighter, you can just go back to that power link, unhook it, and take out one link and shorten it up. And then what that will do is push this rear derailleur down a little bit further so it has less of a gap. Depending what it looks like on big and big, I might do that, but I always go on a little bit longer versus too short of a chain. If it's too short, you put yourself at risk of actually damaging the derailleur when you go to big. I remember back in the 90s, we had some weird modifications where, you know, that's when parts were just kind of coming out and some of them didn't play well with each other. And it was kind of like a Wild West mismatching things. And there was another company out there called Suntour that did a lot of componentry, and they were really up against Shimano at the time. And I've had a couple customers that were like, well, I picked up this Suntour Sun Race part that needs to go on this drivetrain, and it was always a kind of a crazy hot mess, you know, situation. Nowadays, a lot of the, SRAM and Shimano, a lot of their componentry kind of matches the same spacing and so forth, which helps with those changing and change out of parts if you're going to switch them over. There is more spec sheets on that, and obviously YouTube is now instead of the 90s where you can actually look up, well, will this work with this? And some guy like me out there is like, yeah, I've done this and that's how it works great. And I'll share some of those gold nuggets too when I come across them as well. So anyway, hanging out with this old bike here. So my next phase is going to be doing the cables and housing. That's going to be a little bit lengthier time. I'm not going to do it in this video here. I just wanted to do a little, this old bike, hanging out with the guy. And if you have any questions or want to comment on any bikes that you may refurbish, go ahead and put it in the comments below. And thank you for spending time with me. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. So until next time, from the garage.